Hi guys, today it's time for the first part of my June wrap-up. So somehow I have already read 11 things in June. I did have a week off, but still I am like kind of amazed by that. So I finished 5 novels, 4 audiobooks, 1 short story and 1 graphic novel. It's more a collection of drawings. It's these books by Sarah Anderson. I read one of those last month as well, but didn't include it in my wrap-up because I don't really have any reason to actually talk about it. So I'm not gonna talk about it in this one as well. Let's just get into it. The first book I finished this month was You Know Me Well by David Levithan and Lena LaCour. I picked this up from the library kind of randomly just because I wanted to read more by Lena LaCour anyway. I liked it overall. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars and I think it was a nice story, but it was also kind of a forgettable story. It was super short and I think I only just got into the story and kind of only started being interested in the characters and then it ended. It is a book with a queer main character, so that's always nice to read about. I just don't think it's anything special, but definitely, especially now in Pride Month, if you're looking for a book with queer characters, I definitely recommend reading this. It's not a bad book by any means. It's just a little bit short and nothing special. Then I listened to the audiobook of Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari, and I really ended up enjoying this quite a lot, actually. I know many people from my generation kind of don't really get anything out of it because it's a lot about like online dating and it doesn't give you any kind of new information. But since I don't do any kind of online dating at all, there were definitely a few things that were kind of new to me. Obviously, I still, get a lot of things from other people, so I still kind of know how weird and stupid it can be. But still, there were a lot of things in this book that, I wasn't really aware of, and so it was really fun. I think what I liked most about it was the look at different cultures and how they kind of date in today's times and how they kind of use online dating. I think that was definitely my favorite part of the whole book. Overall, I gave Modern Romance a 3 out of 5 stars. And then I finished Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. This is the second and final book in the Monsters of Verity duology, and this was really exciting. I did not expect this to have like 470 something pages, so it was really long, and I have to say I did struggle with it a little bit in parts. Overall, as a conclusion for this duology, I was really happy with it in the end. I think it was a good conclusion. It was emotional. I definitely got emotional at the end of it. It was definitely an intense book, but the first half, almost I want to say, was very slow. And I know that people who are not as big of a fan of Victoria Schwab as me say that all the time about all of her books. I never saw it. I never saw any problems with the pacing. I think especially in A Gathering of Shadows, I kind of see where people are coming from, but because I love the characters so much, I never really minded that. In this case, I do love Kate and August quite a lot, but I'm more invested in the world building and kind of what is going on in society and some of the like side characters and minor characters more than I am interested in the 2 main characters. I like them, don't get me wrong, but by no means are they my favorite characters. The first half of this focuses a lot on, what they kind of were up to since they parted ways in the first novel, and it was so slow. I felt a little bit bored by some of the beginning. I did end up really loving it, but I was just a tiny bit disappointed with the first half of the book. One of the aspects that I personally found a little bit annoying, actually, was that Kate obviously is not in Verity anymore at the beginning of this book. She meets these new people in this other city. She works with these other people, and you can tell that she has some kind of emotional connection to a few of these. And then she leaves, which that's not a spoiler. I mean, it's kind of obvious that, she would leave and she would go back to Verity for some reason. She leaves and we never hear from these people again. And I found some of these really interesting and I really wanted to see them again. I mean, not that that kind of affected my rating, but I was just kind of like, okay, why even bring this cast of characters up and make us see that, there is a connection with Kate and these people and then not bring them up at all anymore? That felt really sad, and I feel like that was a missed opportunity. They could have been included. I don't really know why it didn't happen. I kind of expected that to happen. Anyway, I feel like this is the first time I'm actually like having critical thoughts on a Victoria Schwab book. I also only gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I think this is so far my least favorite Victoria Schwab book. I still loved it, don't get me wrong. Victoria Schwab is still my all-time favorite author. Nothing about that changed at all. A few people might probably be shocked because in the past I always gave all of her books 5 stars and I love every reread and everything. So this is a little bit different, but honestly, I'm almost like a little bit happy that I still have critical thoughts because I keep loving every book. I feel like, you know, I got really biased and I wouldn't be able to tell anymore if I genuinely just wasn't into a book. Yeah, in the end I kind of felt like, okay, like there's still a soul in me that has actual critical thoughts about Victoria Schwab too, and I guess that's a good thing. Then I read 10% Happier by Dan Harris. I don't even want to get into detail on this because I really did not enjoy it. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. I expected this to be a self-help book with a little bit of a memoir, but basically it was just like 99% memoir. I didn't learn anything except for I don't like Dan Harris. So let's move on. Then I read one of my favorite books of the year, and that is The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. I do not know how to describe this book. It was just so intense and so good. I just genuinely, I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how to describe it. It's just such a good book that I feel like everybody should read. It does have trigger warnings for rape and sexual assault and probably a lot more triggers, but these are kind of the most prominent triggers in there. What I really loved about it is that, you know, it kind of showed that you can have a book that has a really important message that deals with a really dark and tough topic, and that is a really hard read, and it can be a lot about that and can really show you the horrible sides of that, and it can make you feel physically sick, but it can also show you, you know, a great friendship and a really nice romance. And I think that was what fascinated me so much about this book, that there were parts that made me physically sick that were really, really hard to read, but there were also parts that I just really, really enjoyed because they were just really nice and great, and the main character had such great character development and the side characters had great character development, and yeah, yeah, I'm still speechless. It's a wonderful book and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then I finished another one of my favorite books of the year, and this is actually one of my favorites of all time. I'm already getting emotional because it was a very emotional read for me. It's actually currently my number 2 favorite book of the year. That means it's the book that's number 2 to A Conjuring of Light. And if you know me and you know how much I love A Conjuring of Light, you will know that that means a lot, that this is the book that's right behind it. And I never expected it to be contemporary. So I read Ramona Blue by Julie Murphy. This is another book I am still absolutely speechless about. This book is so beautiful. It's so absolutely beautiful. I don't even, like, once again, I just don't even know how to describe it and where to begin. This story got some really negative hype a few months before its release because the Goodreads synopsis was apparently a little bit shitty, and it kind of made it sound like this is a story where, you know, the main character, who's a lesbian, is just going through a phase and, you know, she just needs some dick to kind of straighten it out. The Goodreads synopsis got changed, and I personally found the premise so interesting because when I read the synopsis, all I got from it was that, you know, there was this girl who identified as a lesbian her whole life and who felt very comfortable with that and who never really had a problem with coming out to people. And then, you know, her childhood best friend returns to the city. They spend a lot of time together and she ends up falling in love with him. And she questions her sexuality. She questions her feelings. She doesn't really know how all of a sudden to tell her gay friends that she has fallen in love with a guy. It's a story that I actually really wanted to pick up because it sounded like a story that would be really important to me as someone who is still kind of constantly questioning her sexuality, and I do kind of want to make a whole video about it, and I tried filming it 2 or 3 times, but I'm never quite happy with the way it turns out. But yeah, so this is really a story about a girl kind of finding out that sexuality is something that is fluid. This is what I felt my whole life. I don't understand why people, like, obviously labels are important and we need labels, but I don't understand why people are so keen on having to stay with one label and why they expect everybody to to have their shit together always, all the time, from the moment they come out. And this book kind of showed how, you know, complicated that can be for yourself, especially if there's friends that don't really support you. There were just so many different perspectives to this, and there were friends that really supported her and that, you know, didn't really think about it, and then were other friends that had problems with it. It was also written in a way where you could understand where everybody was coming from. It was very upsetting in parts, but in the end you always understood why the people were saying what they were saying. Not only that, it's in general a really beautiful book about friendship and family dynamics as well. This also deals with Ramona's bigger sister being pregnant and Ramona wanting to take care of her, wanting to take care of the baby. Her father works a lot. Her mom is in a really shitty situation as well. It's just, I mean, it has over 400 pages and it deals with a lot of stuff, but everything is done so well. The writing, I don't often realize writing just in general, and it's not like this was like super special writing, but it was just beautiful writing, simplistic, beautiful writing. I loved every single thing about this book. Like, I was actually so emotional throughout this whole 400 something page novel that I had to take breaks every few chapters because I felt so emotionally overwhelmed. And it was every single emotion in it. It was happiness, it was sadness, it was anger. I'd highly, highly recommend this book. Absolutely. It's so good. Yes. Oh my god. I definitely have not felt this way since A Conjuring of Light. Like, there were a few books that made it onto my favorites of the year, and there were a few books that I really, really enjoy. This one was on a whole nother level. Then I listened to the audiobook of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I was so happy that these audiobooks are available on Overdrive. They are narrated by Stephen Fry, and I think they were kind of done for Pottermore. I've been wanting to reread the Harry Potter books for such a long time, never quite get into it. Obviously I loved it, but I do have to say, I think Prisoner of Azkaban is not my favorite anymore. It's just that the first time you read this book, there's so many like things that get revealed that are really exciting and really amazing, and you get to know these characters that are really amazing and really exciting and really cool. Having watched this film a million times, because it is definitely my favorite film, and it's definitely the film that I have watched the most out of all of these, I think it was just not something new, nothing exciting about it anymore. I think the third movie does stay very, very true to the book as well. Obviously, there's things in this one that are not in the film as well, but still, I feel like the third one is a very faithful adaptation. So if you've watched the film as many times as I have, yeah, it's just the book is not too exciting. As I said, I still loved it. I still love all of the characters that get introduced. Just getting a little bit more detail on some of the things in the story is just really nice, but I just really don't think it's my favorite anymore, and I'm not mad about it. I'm actually glad I'm finally kind of finding out what my actual favorite in the series is through rereading these. Then I read another of my favorites of the year. Whoops! I read My Arc of Warcross by Mary Lou. I absolutely love this one. It actually exceeded my expectations. And if you saw my June TBR and how much I freaked out about this book, you will know that this actual read, even exceeding my expectations, means a lot. I just loved everything. And I expected this to have some really cool world building and to have like a really interesting, fun story. What I did not expect is to get as emotionally involved and to be as emotionally involved with the romance. Now, I don't want to say too much about this because it only comes out September 12th, I want to say. So it's still a while until it comes out, which that's... Yeah, I mean, I wanted to read this so early because I couldn't wait, but also, why did I read it so early? This is also the first book in a duology. That means I will have to wait such a long time now for the fucking sequel. And this book doesn't necessarily end on a cliffhanger, but it does end in a way where you really want to know how it goes on. I'm just very, very, very invested in the world, in the characters. I just cannot wait to see how this whole story will end in like 15 months. It's fine. Obviously, closer to the release, I will put up a video review and also a written review on my Goodreads, so definitely look out for that if you're interested. But I can already tell you, like, look forward to it. It's amazing. I am so excited. Oh my god. I obviously gave Warcross 5 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to the audiobook of The Girl with a Lower Back Tattoo by Amy Schumer, and I was so surprised by how much I love this book. I am not a big fan of Amy Schumer at all. I haven't seen lots of her stuff. I just don't really find her humor funny, and I think some of her feminism is a little problematic, but still, I saw this book on Overdrive and I thought, why not? It's such a real, raw, and honest memoir. It was so great to listen to her. She was not trying to be funny in any way. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's actually one of my favorite memoirs I have ever read / listened to. It's just great. I would highly recommend it, even if you don't like Amy Schumer. And finally, I read the short story, The Loveless Princess by Lillian Bodley. I received this through NetGalley in exchange for an honest review, but I'm not gonna upload a full video review of this because, as I said, it's a short story. I don't feel like I have enough to say about it. This is a short story that is kind of a, fairy tale. It has a asexual, aromantic protagonist, which I found really interesting. It's not something that I personally identify as, but I found it even more interesting for me to pick this book up and kind of have the story and also, support this. I think this is Own Voices, but I'm not 100% sure. I did not end up enjoying this at all. I think the fairy tale aspect was very boring. The writing was just not good. I feel like if you have a fairy tale and you kind of go for the very basic 101 of a fairy tale, at least give me some really pretty writing so that I can kind of not be bothered by it just being a very simple fairy tale that, doesn't bring anything new to the genre. Especially I feel like as this has an aroace protagonist, there would have been so many great ways to kind of, play with the tropes of fairy tales, and that was kind of something that was missing for me. I would not have minded not enjoying it at all if the representation was good, but I just don't think the representation was good. Obviously, I cannot speak for anybody that identifies as aroace. I'm still waiting for someone to reply. I asked them if I could link their review, but you can also check Goodreads. There's some Own Voices reviews. The 2 issues I think that I personally found, the first one was that, the title alone, The Loveless Princess, is kind of a little bit shitty because aroace people are not incapable of loving. It's just not romantic love. They still love their friends, they still love their families, and the title is a little bit problematic, but I could have overlooked it if this was actually something that was kind of well done in the book, but there was no distinction. Quite often the character mentioned, I just don't love anybody. I know it's kind of nitpicky. Obviously authors are not perfect and they make mistakes, but I feel like with this being such a common misconception about aroace people, that's something that should have been paid attention to. The other problem that I had with the representation was the villain, but I can't talk about it because that would spoil basically everything and the whole conclusion of this book. I just think some things with the villain were just not very well done either. I mean, I'm still glad this book exists, and it's good to see a fantasy with an aroace protagonist, and I do hope we get to see so many more of these and that we get some with some better representation. I just think overall this book, didn't really do well in the representation, and it didn't really do well when it comes to the execution of this whole idea, and so this fell very, very flat for me, and I only gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Anyway, these were all of the books that I read in the first half of June. I'm sorry, this was such a long part 1 again. These videos are intended to be 2 parts so that I end up making shorter videos. It's not happening. Instead, I feel like I just get encouraged to read a lot more. Let me know some of the books you have read so far in June. How are you doing with your Goodreads challenge? I mean, we are almost, at the halfway mark of the year. I'm not even going to talk about my challenge because I'm doing so well. You will all be angry at me. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!